G'day guys, how you going? Hope you're all doing very well. Today I'm going to be doing a movie review. Now this movie I picked up yesterday. It was a blind buy and it was a fairly pricey film, so it was a very risky move for me, especially the fact that it's an American horror film. So I went in there hoping that this would be good, but my greater expectation was that it was going to be a letdown because I've been burnt numerous times by Hollywood horror films in the past. But what this film had going for it was the fact that it had won a few awards, plus it was an American independent horror film. So these days it's really, you've got to go to the underground or independent filmmakers to get good horror. So I had a slight hope that this one might redeem American horror for me. It's a 2008 horror film directed by Matt Zettel, and this movie is called Resurrection County. Now, I've heard no one talk about this one. It surprised me when I saw it. I thought, this story looks pretty interesting. It looks pretty good on the back, and the front cover is pretty interesting as well. Plus the fact that it won some awards at a film festival. Got Best Horror Film at the Barebones International Film and Music Festival, plus numerous awards on the back there. So it's not usually a fair indication of whether or not it's a good film. I've seen some films in the past that have been absolute crap, but have won awards at film festivals. So that can be quite misleading. But combined with the other factors, I thought this one could be good. So it's worth getting it without knowing anything about it. And who knows? It's about time I come across a good sort of American horror film. And as I said, it's usually mainstream that is the crap. So this one I had some hopes for. So basically, the story is about two city couples. They're friends. I don't know where they're from, but I know that they're from the city, the sort of upper class. And they decide to go to the south in America and do some camping. So the south, they paint in this movie, they paint the southerners as redneck sort of hillbillies, psychopaths who don't like anyone who's not like them. And they go to the forest and they're all having a good time. The locals are friendly enough, but you can tell that they don't want them there. But yeah, then the two males from each couple, they decide to go on a bike ride through the forest, and they end up getting lost. And so they come across this caravan in the middle of nowhere, and they're a bit worried by who's inside, but they need help, they need directions. So they go to see if anyone's inside, and there is a guy inside, a very dirty guy with a double-barrel shotgun, and he's getting a little bit uptight. He doesn't know why they're there, that he wants them gone, and he threatens them. And then they say they don't want any trouble, they just want directions. So then another guy comes along, another southerner guy, and he threatens them with a pistol. And things start getting out of hand, and there's an incident which results in the two city folk running for their lives because they've angered the southerners, and then it turns into a fight for survival. The two guys have to get back to the campsite to the two women to tell them what's happened to get out of there. So they're in a race against time before the southerners find the females. And then the movie pretty much takes off from there. It's as far as I go with it. Now, my thoughts on the film. What I didn't like, not necessarily only with this movie, but with a lot of these type of movies that have to do with the South, they paint the South as all the same. Redneck sort of hillbilly psychopaths, inbred, all of that kind of stuff. You got films like Deliverance, which is basically sort of the same. Psychopaths that can't be trusted. You got Wrong Turn, who are deformed sort of psychopaths from that region. And you've got this film, which are basically, psychopaths once again. So you've got that basic stereotype, that generalization of the South that, they're the bad ones and we're the good guys. Nothing's in between. It's all black and white. So, especially in American horror films, they have to really paint who's good and who's bad. It's usually the bad guys that only do the bad things and the good guys that only do the good things. So it's just a case of good versus evil. And a lot of countries do it, a lot of foreign cinema, they do it, but it more so in American horror films. In my opinion, that's what I've come to notice. But what I did like about this movie was the fact that no one was free of guilt in this film. Although the people from the South, they reacted in a very bad way, and I don't condone the way that they reacted for a reason. Now, I know I have said that not every sort of horror film needs an explanation, and I think a lot of horror films get ruined from the fact that they try to explain it, and it just becomes such a far-out sort of story that you lose credibility. But in this one, the city folk, they do something that would get anybody angry, and so they're not free of all guilt, and they're to blame for some of the problems that have occurred. And so that was a really sort of fresh approach. Even though the guys from the south, the locals, even though they went to extreme lengths, you could kind of tell why. Without condoning it, you can understand why they went to these lengths. They weren't just straight out psychos. Well, they were psychos, but it was really a reaction rather than just an attack for no specific reason. So I thought it gave a lot of realism to the villains and the good guys. It painted them as very real people. And I think that although I didn't like the fact that they were the stereotype, dirty, inbred sort of hicks, I like the fact that they were painted as real people, not just mindless sort of killing machines. So that was a welcome breath of fresh air. Now, I like the fact that the start of the film, well, when they were running through the forest, I like the fact that it had a lot of suspense. It kind of gave you fear that they're going to be caught. The characters in this film were all likable. You didn't want anything bad to happen to them. So that was another breath of fresh air, especially coming from an American horror film. The characters were likable. So they're, again, a very real sort of portrayal of some very real people. Now they had their problems, but they didn't overreact. They didn't, they weren't selfish. So I actually found myself liking every character in this film, and I didn't want to see what happened to them. So I thought that they didn't deserve it, and as I said, it's a breath of fresh air from the usual standard Hollywood horror, where they make the characters so annoying that it just doesn't bring any fear to it, and you just want to see them get killed. So this movie is very different. Now, what I didn't like was the fact that halfway through the film they sort of forgot about the suspense and it turned into more of a torture film. Now, don't get me wrong, it's a very brutal film and I was very surprised by how brutal it was. But considering the start, considering the suspense that they had at the start, I thought it was a bit of a letdown because halfway through it's like they thought, okay, they've had enough suspense, now let's get to the good stuff. So suspense-wise, there is something in it for you, but then halfway through it just kind of loses it. But overall, this film did redeem American horror for me. I was very, very surprised. The direction was very, very good. It was kind of a shaky sort of camera, but the actual quality of the film picture was very, very good. I thought it had a very sort of 70s feel to it, so fans of 70s horror, you can tell that the director of this film was a fan of 70s horror, so it's kind of a throwback to that. It was kind of dark. It wasn't a grainy picture, but it was dark, but then at the same time had bright colours. So it really created a very unique sort of experience, and I actually think when the bloody stuff happens, it looked really cool because the blood was a lot darker than than usual. So a lot to like about this film. Now the acting was good all around, very surprising coming from a very low budget horror film. I thought, as I said, very real characters, no annoying characters, and the villains were very good, and they had a very sort of real approach to the villains. They were, I'm not going to tell you what happens, but they themselves are emotional, and that's what I liked about it. The villains were painted as real people, and it's just a very, very unfortunate set of circumstances that led to this really bad sort of event. Now, although the good guys were part to blame, it doesn't lay all the blame on either side. So there's a bit of bad on both sides, which again creates a very realistic sort of story. Now at the end I thought the wheels started falling off a little bit, it turned into a little bit silly, but overall, considering the amount of crap that's out there in American horror, this one is a breath of fresh air. I do recommend it. I really, really liked it. It is quite brutal. There is a bit of killing off screen, but overall I thought the violence was very good. I was very pleased with it. So gorehounds, you will get a lot out of this one. And even suspense, even for people looking for suspense, there is something in it for you because half of the film really did a good job at creating the suspense. I just think it was a little bit of a letdown that they decided to go a different sort of direction halfway through. But overall, very, very happy with it. I'll watch it again, and I highly recommend it for all of you guys out there wanting something a little better from American horror. So this is definitely one to check out, guys. Definitely go and see it if you get the chance. Alright guys, that's my review. I hope you liked it, and I'll see you later.